Just one little verse, and I'll pay for your food. That's more kindness, which is more than a millionaire will get all year. Made fun of a man in a hoodie without realizing he just made fun of Will Smith, but Keanu. While he stood up, Reeves watched. Before, the room would never be the same. Before we start today's story, let us know what you think. Where in the world are you seeing this? Type in your city or country in the say something. We love seeing how far these. It was just after 7 p.m. when the doors opened on a warm Friday night. Of La Fontaine opened up inside the. A soft hum of jazz piano could be heard. The air mixing with the sound of clear crystals and quiet talks. The dining room was filled with golden light. Carefully chosen world of luxury wear. There were $500 prizes and designer dresses. Of the background, no one saw the man who walked in. He wasn't dressed like the standard group of people, no fine suits. Rolex, just a dark jacket and black jeans. Scuffed shoes. The hostess looked up, then back down almost. At first glance, he didn't look like someone who should have been here but wasn't. Don't wait to make a reservation for Carter, the guy said in a cool voice to the hostess. Blinked, that name wasn't on her list, or not in a way that made me stand up. Have an eyebrows table for one? She asked, covering up her confusion with work-related. With ease, he nodded. There was something about his body language is calm and quiet. Sure of himself, but it didn't scream wealth. It didn't really say anything, but he was calm, not seen. Almost. The hostess led him by tables lit by candles while they wove between guys in stylish blazers and women dressed in silk. She put him at a small table in the back, close to the bathroom. Out of sight, out of mind, he said. Did not protest. He just sat down and took off his sweater and put it over the back of the chair. That's when the light hit him. Face when things are different. Someone else may have gasped, but not here. Not now, not with the light being so dim. And the wine was so strong that no one. The man in the hoodie was seen to be Will Smith, the artist and actor. Will Smith, a Grammy winner, is a well-known name in anywhere in the world, but tonight, without his name and armor, he was just another man who wants peace and quiet. Dinner across the room by the window. An old friend sat by himself as well, wearing a dark button-down shirt and pants. He drank from a glass of clear water and a good view of everything with not loud. For some reason, his beard was turning a little gray. He looked closely and saw Keanu Reeves. Had seen Will walk in and knew who he was right away. He came in, but didn't say anything. Keanu wasn't there. He was here for a scene of silence, and a room is quiet for a short time, but not for long. Strong, especially when Leonard Grayson was almost ready to come in. But for now, right now, Will. Just a man sitting in the corner without being seen, dressed in a hoodie and taking in the jazz music, as if he were no one for a change. And in some way that was how when trouble started, the room barely had time to calm down when the doors opened again. This time there's more noise and flair, more pride than Leonard Grayson had. He didn't just walk in when he got there. He made his presence known without saying a word, wearing a pristine white suit that sparkled under the chandeliers. Leonard moved like a man who had faith. He had a different experience with gravity too. Men came in close behind, both younger. It was clear that both were trying to be him. Woman who is beautiful, quiet, and obviously bored. The Mater D lined up his tie as if, when money was around, it called for a better "Stance, Mr. Grayson, your table is." "Of course it is," Leonard said. He didn't stop to answer, he didn't. "Leonard, I need to check on the ticket." Grayson was the type of person who thought. His name was on the reservation, and he was. Took him to his corner table in the middle of. It was only normal that Leonard passed Will. Without seeing or looking. He saw the dark skin and the hoodie. He saw the table next to the bathroom and. That 1 second, his brain filed Will. Keanu Reeves under not important. Changed to was watching from across the room. Just a little in his chair, he didn't blink. Did not say a word but the edge of his glass. Hung in the air, forgotten Leonard sat down. Down bought a $400 wine bottle. Without asking anyone what they thought and. Began a speech that was so loud that. It could have been a podcast show as well. What's wrong with art these days? Boomed, no feeling, it's all high-pitched music. Leonard Grayson shows up. Hyped up jumped back in the day ability. Meant something, everyone at the table laughed. Will didn't respond mechanically, and he moved slowly. He drank water and tried to focus his mind. He had lived in places where he had heard worse things. Even worse, Leonard wasn't done yet. Looked toward the jazz and leaned back. Piano player in the corner, even though he said, "Is dying live music is now a treat. What do we get instead? Noise." He shook his hands rap-trap tick-tock. That's what they call sound bites. Now there is more laughing and louder this time the sound bounced off of the. It sounds like wine glasses clinking in a. A toast to stupidity will be looked down at. There was a clean cloth napkin on his lap. Clean, he didn't move, but Keanu did. Careful to put his glass down, then leaned forward ever so. Just a little, he had seen enough nights like. There were enough rooms for abuse to happen. Perfume and Power wore a watch, but what? It didn't matter who spoke the loudest. Was who knew when to talk and. Leonard was rising in pitch, you know it. That would be funny, he said. Sparkling with bad intentions if one of. These street poets of today gave us a. Show right now, he turned his. Look fell on Will, and in that exact. At that time, the whole room moved. Just a little bit, just enough, it was about. To start the sound of a fork hitting a. Plate was the last sound that was clear. It was like the room fell into a weird kind of. Leonard Grayson had found his next target. Victim, he got up a little from his chair. Shaking his drink with a showy move. Then made his words just loud enough. Good enough for half the room to hear. Just in time to catch the other person leaning in. "Hey, are you there?" He pointed and called out. His glass at Will and said, "Yeah, you my table. Just talked about the fine art of. You wouldn't happen to be the type of modern poems. An MC, would you?" Will looked up, calm. But it was hard to read that he didn't answer Leonard. Smiled and said, "Don't be shy, you've got this. The way they look, the coat, and the mystery must be. There are some bars hidden under the room." Laughed awkwardly. Will's eyes met. Leonard's quiet, steady, unjust. "We're having dinner here," he said in a low voice. Leonard didn't want a business but the. He was looking for food, and for a moment he stood. He is now clinking his glass really hard with a. Slice the piano player in the corner. Mid-on paused as he felt a shift. In the mood of the room, girls and. "Gentlemen," Leonard said, "we've got ourselves a guest artist tonight." There were gasps and whispers all over the place. "Let us check to see if he has more." Leonard added with a smirk, "Man, just sing one verse a little. Something that will make our wine worth it." Will held his hands together and didn't move. Now look under the table from across the... Keanu Reeves slowly put down his silverware. He hadn't stepped in yet. Because sometimes the strongest, the ones who wait, are in the room. Who was listening and watching, and he was. As I listened, the waiter came up to Will, reluctantly and clearly stuck between jobs. Sir, you don't care about safety and human respect. You don't have to if you don't want to, customer said, but Will didn't stand up because he wanted to, because he could remember something his grandma told him. When people yelled at his first hi, they don't always show up to the school talent show. See you until you get them to listen. He moved toward the middle of the room, where the chandelier light hit, pulling his hood back as hard as he could. The room. Some guests stopped moving and others squinted, widened their eyes, and some reached for. Leonard didn't see their phones. He was too happy with what he saw to talk. Thought was victory. Keanu leaned forward. That wasn't just a show, that was... will come to an end. Are you still ready? Put a 3 in the comments below to let us know that he stood still. With his hands in his pockets, he heard the soft hum of heavy electric music has taken the place of jazz. There was quiet as many eyes looked at him. Others were interested and thought of a few, embarrassed in private for him, but Leonard Grayson was the most cocky. Wine glass, come on now, Leonard said, in hand like a microphone. Tell us what all the fuss was about, or were the Grammys? Is it just a gift bag? A sound of laughter. Will's jaw clenched, for he wasn't new to this. He had been mistaken and underrated, been wronged and made fun of more times than he. There was something, but they could count. There was nothing different about this moment. It was the way the room looked. A lot of people wanted him to fail, were waiting around a fuse for the... Leonard stepped forward, putting out the fire. Now, just a few feet away, what do you think? To make things more interesting, he pulled out a gold money clip and put down 5 fresh $100 bills. Putting cash on a waiter's tray does a little rhyme for us, and this is what you will do. Didn't even look at the money he had. Looked past it, past Leonard straight. They looked at Keanu Reeves for a moment. For a split second, Keanu gave a slow almost. The nod was so small it was hard to notice. That didn't say do it, but it did say do it. Do it your way. It was a moment of disrespect. Will turned back to Leonard and said, do you think this is a game? Slowly, he spoke. You think that being in this room full of people, of money and white sheets, makes you look like hard to reach? Leonard raised an eyebrow, chuckling, but Will wasn't done yet, so I came here. But now you want to eat, he said. He walked to the middle of the empty stage, the space between the tables under the... There was a chandelier that hung like a torch, and reached for a spoon on a table and tapped it. Hit it once on a glass to get the rhythm in his head, and then he stopped and said, I'm not going to take your money, he said. Leonard and I said, we are going to take your story. He started to rap with no beat or mic. Voice perfect, rhythm and words clearer. Each line hit like thunder, sharper than knives. That you want me to dance for your... Proud to forget who I am just to calm down. I've been a king since... Before I had gold, no one would buy my story. It's been lived and told in the room. The frozen guests turned around in their seats. The phone slowly went up to record the piano. In the corner, mouth was still. A little open. You make fun of what you fear. What you could never be, because art isn't a painting, it's real and it's me. Leonard's grin went away like a dying flame. That's not all Will did. He was exposing everyone who has ever cut a Life to A. Word for word, it felt like it had a stereotype. Had to wait years to say, but the most. Keanu hadn't moved, he just sat there. Still watching and listening because this wasn't his time yet, the last word. Left Will's lips like a rock fell in. Still water, I'm not here to serve you. I want to tell you that real power never needs to be heard and then be quiet. No cheers, laughs, or other sounds at all. Besides the soft clink of a wine glass. Glass shaking in someone's hands. Grip the room had stopped moving. Leonard stood there with one hand still, while holding his glass loosely in the other. Being by his side as if he wasn't sure. Not sure what to do with it anymore, he's sure. The stance now looked off balance and open. When Will didn't hear back, he stood back from his table and kept his cool. It sounds like he just cleared his throat. He had just broken the pride of half the room close to the bar woman. They got up slowly and started to clap. As many times as you want, then faster and louder. Someone then followed another person within seconds. The whole room burst in cheers. Forced not to be nice, but to be explosive. A standing ovation for truth and feeling. Not performance will stay sitting, but then a sound that was different from the others. A slow, careful clap from the corner of. Everyone in the room turned to see Keanu. Reeves got up from his seat and held out his hands. Yet to smile, still moving in time. Performing just present a good base. He walked toward Will's house, deeply moved. Applause is still building around the table. Them like waves. David stood still. A person a few feet away looked from Will to Keanu with. The two guys were confused and scared. It couldn't have looked more different. One, glowing with power, took back the other. He felt like he was shrinking in the light. Hikana stopped next to Will and looked around the room and told them you came to see a show. And found out the truth you didn't expect. Leonard, you made fun of a man whose art has changed generations without them even realizing it. Being aware of who he was, that's not just conceit, that's just not knowing, Leonard. He opened his mouth and then shut it. There was no longer anything to say. The cheers stopped, but the energy stayed high. Lingered, charged, woke up for the first time. Will looked around for the first time in a long time. And didn't feel sorry for or dislike them, he saw. That's more important than money, fame, or he never thought he would get payback. Earn in this room, not with his CV, but with his voice. The cheers slowly stopped, but it made more noise in the quiet it left behind. Greater than everything that came before it. And then Keanu spoke, and his voice didn't go up. It wasn't necessary to have it cut off like there's a whisper in the wind that stops everything. You know what the saddest thing is? What part is? He said, turning a little toward Leonard, but loud enough for everyone to hear. To hear you didn't see him because you were not looking, and even now, everything I say, you still don't listen. Leonard tensed up as he tried to call back the faith that had been gone for minutes before, but his normal grin was gone. Group as still as statues. Even the woman by his side looked at him with that made it look like they could see him. With new eyes, Keanu took a step closer to know. That's all he had in his voice, angry. And you thought he was a nobody, that much is clear. Just a guy in a hoodie that you make fun of him, control him, and put him down. The rap that made the room shake. He looked at Will, who was still calm, with their hands softly on the table. But what you didn't know was that you pushed a man with more grace in his, more quiet than you've shown in your whole speech. No one in the room dared to breathe. Keanu now looked straight at Leonard. 3 men stood a few feet away. 2 worlds face to face, you thought. You could buy power with money, but real power, it takes quiet walks, wears hoodies, and eats. When it talks, the whole room hears it. Leonard opened his mouth, but Keanu put up his hand and said, "Not tonight." You can hear the words drop tonight. Leonard slowly sat back down, like a gavel. No longer the center of attention, but a man brought down not by shame but by. The mirror showed him a mirror he had to check out. The people moved around in their seats a bit, talking while others were still stunned, but one. It was clear that the rules had changed. This was no longer just food, it was a moment they would all remember, not for. The food wasn't for the wine, but for. Last night, they learned that honesty is important. Keanu went back to Will for more than just his ego, giving him a polite nod and going back. Back in his seat as if nothing had happened. Nothing fancy in the speech, just the truth. Didn't need a stage at the time. It was subtle like dust in golden light. Had told the truth, Keanu had shut him up. The storm, but what came next was the of quiet that made people think. Keanu stood still, not as a celebrity, not as a hero, but as a man who had been seeing, measuring, and finally picking. To talk, he didn't raise his voice. Did not look at Leonard any longer. He spoke to the room in the real audience. Years ago he started. I went through something I don't talk about. I lost someone close to me and I wasn't able to do anything for a while. The room was still, but think couldn't feel it. Some people knew the story, but most didn't. The only thing that made me leave. There was music, not orchestras, in that dark place. Not music or jazz, but real rap. Weak, like someone yelling into the empty with the hope that someone out there might get why he stopped one of those. Will's voice was shocked, and he blinked. Keanu gave me a small smile. I used to sit by myself in a small Toronto apartment and play. It's always been just the two of us, not because it looked good, but because it was real. Now, the room heard none out of to be nice, but because they were amazed, and you all saw men fill in tonight. In the middle of a room that he tried to shrink, but instead he grew. He pointed around with words that were true. You don't need to like rap. Have to put on hoodies, but if you're rich, your table's name makes you forget. Tips for telling when art is beating in front of you, then the problem. Not the society, maybe it's the mirror. Then a few people gave a soft clap. Even louder, but Keanu just nodded. Once looked at Will and said, low enough for him to hear, I owed you that one. Will's face didn't change much, just a little. A small twitch up at the corner of his mouth, the quiet kind of thanks. That doesn't need words because truths don't need to be yelled out loud. Just need to be seen for a long time. No one moved for a moment, and the clapping didn't carry as much weight as Keanu's words did. Stuck in the air like the last note of A. Echoing and lasting, unforgettable. Leonard was no longer able to move in his chair. Court is no longer the center of anything, his wine or his money. Clip left behind next to his empty plate. His friends avoided making eye contact, not with Will, but the show was better with him. Was over, but the word had. Will stood still and slowly thinking. He wasn't happy or mad, just present. He tacked in his hoodie and kindly nodded at the table next to him, where a woman said, thank you, Keanu. After a heartbeat, there were no big No last words, just a hand and some motions. Set their hand gently on Will's shoulder like what goes at the end of a beautiful line. They both walked toward the door. Not because of fame or because the crowd split up. They were stars, but since 2002. That night, gravity was pulling everyone to the side, even the maitre. Those who hadn't seen Will coming in now quietly opened the door. Just before leaving, Will stopped, turned around for a moment and looked back at Truth stands taller. Leonard, not out of spite or even with pity. Just be clear next time, Will said. Calmly, don't mix up silence with absence. Leonard didn't answer. Couldn't. Will stepped outside Keanu. The doors to La Fontaine then opened, closed softly behind them. There was a click, but it could have been a slam inside. Talk slowly started up again. But the mood had changed, and no one spoke. Talk about their trips or drinks, or they talked about their investments. That line, that pause, that song. And how for a night you'll never forget. Truth walked into a room full of money and was bigger than them when they left. The air was cool at night, and Will end. The quiet path was reached by Keanu. The sound of La Fontaine getting smaller. Behind them, like the end of a scene. Curtain. They didn't talk right away. They didn't have to look up at. The sky was clear and the moon was shining. You only see the sky when you've just left a spot that tried to close you in. Keanu took a hand out of his coat and placed. It had a small notepad on it. Wrote down the phrase, truth doesn't need a. On stage, all you need is courage. Will. Thanks, man, he said with a small, tired smile. Said in silence. Keanu replied, don't thank me. I just stood there as they walked. They went down the block and then their way split. There shouldn't be any noise, just two men going. They carry something in their own way. Unseen but strong between them by. The story was already old the next morning. Gone popular, someone had filmed the exchange from the moment Leonard, being teased, Will fired back the loud cheers and the words Keanu sent like justice wrapped in peace. In 12 hours, 4 million people watched the video. The popular slogan was speak like Will. Keanu knew that being quiet gives you power to think. Flooded the internet. Podcasts were broken down. It was freestyle and art schools as part of their weekly thoughts. Quotes were put on kids' shirts. A Chicago youth center changed its name to its open mic night in the Will Smith room. Will didn't post a word the whole time. I told you there would be no retweets or news tours. He chose to sit at his old piano instead. The next night, when it was quiet in his small room, and started to write again. Not for glory or to get back at someone, but for himself. To the kid who used to think a coat and hoodie made him unseen for the people. Told artists to sit down and don't talk. To people who knew how to be quiet. Not as peace, but as a cage or two. One sound can sometimes do it all. Move the room, especially when that noise is brave enough to tell the truth. So what about? What level are you scared to take onto? If this story made you drop 7 in the comments or type I'm not going to. Don't say anything to let us know, and don't forget to sign up for more real stories about class bravery and quiet power. Your moment could be next. We're still here if this. Tell us what you think about the story below. You don't say I won't stay silent. Need a stage to tell the truth. You need to be brave to speak out, and if you believe in being kind, honest, and taking a stand when it counts, share this. Click the like button and sign up for more powerful stories and become a place where the truth is heard more than Ego, your time may come next.